Hello, good evening. I imagine it's probably an evening, but it could be a day, depending on where you are from all over the world. Welcome to our University of Roehampton London online presentation tonight. Welcome to all project management managers, business students, aspiring students alike. We're talking about building a new future with project management. We've got a very exciting schedule today. We're going to look at rebuilding project management in the lens of a student's work. Our student has been working on rebuilding Kosovo, the nation of Kosovo, and we're going to get to that in a second. But let's look at our agenda today before we meet our guest. So we're going to talk about Kosovo and put the context of this project in context at the beginning of our presentation today. Then we're going to talk about project managers, the behavioural traits of those managers and what positive, negative behavioural traits could be. We're going to look at resistance to projects, to propose and ongoing projects, and dive in a bit into risk and uncertainty, a subject that project managers love to talk about. Appropriate project management tools, and how your project management degree can equip you for tomorrow's challenges. Now, you know, there's lots of project management options out there, from the Lean Sigma 6 course to your MPM. You can go and do Scrum, Agile. You know, there really are such a lot of options. But you know, if you're ready to take it on and do a full project management masters, you can really, you know, it's in the title, you can master all of these kind of elements of project management and do massive projects like our guest has been doing. Let's meet our lovely guest for today. My name is Joseph O'Brien. I'll be your moderator, and our University of Roehampton London online student today is Vjollca Behluli, our MPM graduate. Welcome today, Vjollca. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really, really well. I'm looking forward to learning a lot about your specific project. I've done bits of project management in the past. I'm studying for an MBA at the moment, so there is, you know, a bit of project and operations management involved in that. I'm quite interested to see how you kind of put it to practice and put some of the lessons that you've learned in class into the battlefield, so to speak, on projects. So, Vjollca, can you just tell the audience a bit about yourself, where you're based, what you do, and how you ended up as a student at the University of Roehampton?
I am from Kosovo. Kosovo is a newly established country in the world. It has a mixed population. It resides with many nationalities living in Kosovo. It has gone through a conflict, but it's getting rebuilt as fast as we can. I have been working with international community for quite some years now, doing project management, but I was doing that in a type of learning by doing basis. That's why I decided to take a program that would give me the professional background so that I can deal with project management in more of a professional manner. Currently, I am serving as the grants manager for a Swiss-funded project that covers 17 municipalities in Kosovo. And before this, I have done a lot of other positions working in different organizations.
Lovely. Well, you've got experience now working in a non-profit organization. That's going to be interesting for a lot of our, you know, students or prospective students who might want to understand, you know, how things might be different in an organizational business context for project management, and how things might be different or similar in a non-profit context as well, Vjollca. So we can kind of discuss that too. What we're going to discuss today is Rebuilding Kosovo from a project management perspective. That's the case study we're looking at. You kind of mentioned a few facts about Kosovo. Can you give us a background to Kosovo and why, you know, why such a big rebuilding project was necessary?
Because Kosovo has gone through the conflict, most of the country has been sort of damaged. So after 1999, after the liberation, we needed to really work a lot to bring the population back, because it had been removed, and also create good environment for good living conditions for them. Being that Kosovo is quite an agricultural landscape, there was quite good basis for the country to be rebuilt in a rapid manner. Kosovo has about 70% of its residents that are between the age of 25 to 40, and they are good, highly educated population. Kosovo does have a very rich cultural heritage. It has, for example, a castle in one of municipalities that is dated on the 12th century. It has Shari Mountains, which is really very beautiful landscape. It has a lot of potential for tourism development. It has a lot of potential for economy development. So what it needs is to have people that will move these developments forward. That's why I have entered the program to help my country and contribute reaching these goals, reaching these targets.
Amazing. I mean, if you look at the the former Soviet Union and some of the satellite states that were there, and Estonia was the tech hub and the satellite tech hub, and then there was space places that were agriculture hubs, and then those countries have had to break off and create their own identity. But a lot of that is in the roots of what they've become experts at doing through the former communist regime, and it's kind of how to remix that and bring that into the kind of the digital age as well, and the age of automation. I mean, 70% of residents aged 25 to 40 is very very young. If you look at Estonia and some of the other Eastern European countries, I think we find quite a similar story across the board as well. And it's important to grow at home. I love this comment, Vjollca. You're very interested to see your community develop in the best ways, improving the quality of life not only for yourself and my family but for all citizens living here. Being in the position to assist and contribute in building these capacities has been my goal. Is this how long term a project is this for you?
A lifetime project. I am looking forward to really contribute. I see a lot of need for these kinds of skills and professional development. So I am trying to do my best to transmit all this knowledge that I have gained over these years, not only with the program I did with university, but the overall experience that I have gone through to the new generations. And I see that this potential can be really used and channeled in a good way, so that all this knowledge and all these skills can be transmitted to the new generations, so that new generations are also fully capable to continue this contribution that I have started. I see this as a very positive way to move the country the right direction.
No, I totally agree. It's like a big project, Rebuilding Kosovo. It's kind of it's so lofty, and it's kind of hard to put your finger on a project with such a massive amount of scope. So all I can assume is that what that encapsulates is a lot of small win projects and different types of projects doing various things to help in the rebuilding project. As well. We have some questions coming in, which is great, because in about 30 minutes or so, 20 minutes or so, we're going to have a Q&A. So please have your questions ready for Vjollca, whether it's about the project specifically or about the course. So thank you for that. And Stephen's taking those questions and will send that to me. So please prepare your questions. So Vjollca, I kind of wanted to dive deep into some of the lessons from your master's degree, and some of the kind of good practices for project management in general, and in the context of the work that you've been doing as well. How have your new project management skills, do you feel, helped your organization?
I have been working directly with several municipalities, but I have worked more in depth with the municipality with which I have worked, also using as a study case for my paper. I have seen that many techniques that I have learned with the program have been able to be utilized immediately in practice, and this has enabled the organization to establish a structure that would link all the chains to a project life cycle, which is really important. I have noticed and observed that in the organization or the municipality where I was working, there was a high effort in doing work, but there was a kind of missing link in each step of this cycle, leading to improving the efficiency planning, procurement, monitoring towards the finalization of each process in the project management cycle. And being that municipality is really accountable and responsible for public funding, meaning the taxpayers' money, they needed to prove to the citizens that they are there to manage their funds in the best way, be accountable towards the activities and actions they were taking, and also be accountable towards the funding and expenditures they were making. So I have seen that a lot of techniques I've learned in the modules of the program have enabled me to transmit those to the officials I was working with, so that they have started improving their structures and their way of working in order to improve this efficiency that they were seeking to.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, it's good enough to work hard, isn't it? But working smart is probably, you know, twice as beneficial for anyone. And so if you put some kind of smart working or efficiencies into a process, then that can often work. I mean, if you even look at lean project management, what is lean? Lean's all about efficiency in the process. Just-in-time management's the same, efficiency, cutting out waste in the process. And that can work as well, especially for non-profits or government organizations or government projects where I assume, Vjollca, as you must know, things can get quite loose and lose their structure, or and things can drift out of deadline and drift out of scope.
Exactly.
Often if regime changes as well, and if there's instability politically, then that
Especially
only adds.
especially
Yeah.
if there is a tendency for frequent change in the leadership and in the
Regime, yeah.
management regime, then that can really lead to a lot of deficiencies in all the high-level establishment that really a project management
Exactly.
cycle
Yeah.
is seeking.
Yeah, and yeah, not to mention, you know, the inherent issues of corruption that are often there in these kind of rebuilding efforts, government rebuilding projects, you know, from former different nations with different regimes. You know, there's so much to put in context here. It takes a certain type of person, I would say, Vjollca, to do that. And I'd kind of want to know from you, what do you think of the behavioural attributes that you feel make up an effective project management? What do you feel makes you, you know, powerful and able to do your job, you know, week to week?
I think you have to really have an integrity, be a leader so that others can follow you. Have uh, good organizational skills, are honest, you are reliable, you have good communication skills. Communication is really the key to good performance. So if you want to be a good leader and a good performer, you have to have all these traits and attributes so that those makes you an effective project manager. If you, as a project manager, lack any of these, then it's very hard for your followers to be with you, and then you will basically reach to a point of potential failure if you don't have these good leadership skills and be an effective project manager.
I agree, and honesty and reliability are good bedfellows, but they are slightly different in terms of, you know, having integrity and being honest, and being reliable in terms of your project delivery or timeliness, and things like that, which obviously are absolutely essential in the project management game. There's no way out of that. Do you find, because I certainly did, do you find that, you know, studying online, doing the course, going through the week-to-week activities, keeping yourself structured, do you think that activity of being a student helped you be better organized?
Oh yes, a lot, of course. Especially if you have to stick to a schedule and you that is a kind of must for you if you want to be successful in your studying path. Then a well-organized, well-organized, being personal, well-organized is really the key. The program has taught me that you have to really have a good planning in order to reach all the deadlines or all the studying activities and efforts you have to make in order to succeed. Otherwise, if you miss the deadlines, then you will be failing, and that's not something you want to be in a situation like, I think.
Exactly.
But this has also helped me, and I guess it's helping other students to try and well organize your daily activities, be it at work or with your family at home. Planning well and organizing your work helps you a lot to achieve everything that you have in your plate, be it professionally or personally.
Exactly. I think, as a student, we set up our students because they're all working professionals to be in class, and the kind of work that they're doing, the way they communicate, is kind of meant to mirror the working environment. They're meant to take work-based problems into the classroom and solve them, and then go back into the field and put theory to practice. The good communication skills. I imagine there's so many different stakeholders that you deal with working from an NGO. I imagine you deal with international stakeholders as well, men, women, all different types of ages, shapes and sizes, and backgrounds. I imagine, doing shared activities in the classroom might have influenced you there as well, Vjollca. Did that help in your communication skills?
Yes, it did, because at the very beginning, when I started my first module, sometimes I would get mad with the classmates and the way they would approach, and then I realized this maybe just the way they deal with issues. There is nothing personal, and it's only an approach that people learn over their life. So, whereas at times I try to be diplomatic in my approach, but I didn't get the same with other students. And then I learned that it's the path that you just have to follow. It's the same with my daily routine. I cannot expect all the stakeholders to be nice, because it's just their way of dealing with stuff, just their type of communication. So I have learned that I should practice the same way of communication in my class with my stakeholders, and that have brought a lot of results, because I've seen that you have to really adjust to these situations to be able to communicate normally with all the stakeholders. So that was another element that I have learned with shared activities in modules. And I think I have matured and grown up as I was doing one module after the other. I have learned how to communicate with other students, but also I have learned to communicate with my stakeholders in practice.
I mean, exactly, and as you said earlier, it's not always going to go easy with everyone you speak to, especially if you're working on a project that has huge scope and high stakes. Within those projects, within our offices and organizations, we often handle resistance. This is a question that comes up a lot in leadership webinars that I do. How should a leader, or how should a project manager handle resistance? What are your keys to that?
I think a project manager should be very clear in communication to the followers or to the staff members, so that there is no misunderstanding. I have observed from my experience that lack of information leads to a lot of misunderstandings, and in order to not reach that situation, a good project manager is a good communicator. A good communicator communicates very clearly what's the message or what's the state, and then it's very easy for the followers to handle the resistance that might be coming. I have seen from the practice that there is always a tendency for resistance, because people have a fear of change. They don't know what is the outcome of the change, whether that will be positive or beneficial, or will turn out to be a complete disaster. That's why there is always a tendency to resist. So I think another very good or very important thing is giving people an ownership of a situation, or because I have seen or I have observed that if you give people ownership, then they feel a higher level of responsibility. So this is very good. If I have the responsibility, I take the issues or the work more seriously because I know that I am responsible for that. So I believe that project managers can work towards these traits in order to avoid resistance or to face any kind of difficulties in working with their peers.
I like the idea of this kind of structured transparency, you know, along the way. You know, you kind of hold the keys, but you give people their ownership, and you, as the project goes on, you involve people and communicate, and you're transparent. And I like that perception over benefit. You know, fear is always derives from the unknown. So what you don't know, you're scared of. So the only way to not be scared is information. So I mean, that's why information is the most clear way to allay fear. But the incorrect dissemination of information can increase fear. And so the project as we can, that's another webinar, right? But the project manager is has a leadership role as well.
Maybe that is also linked to, as you said, the perception of over benefit. If there is a dissemination of wrong or incorrect information, then it might lead to something that a project manager would not want to get into, or a collaborator doesn't want to get into that situation. So it's a kind of a win-win situation.
Exactly. I mean, I see as some you know, the Japanese technique of nemawashi, where you go to every stakeholder and you tell them exactly what the aims and objectives are of the meeting you're about to have, and by the time you get to the meeting, every single stakeholder has been approached individually. Everyone is around their table aligned. There's not to be any it's meant to be totally harmonious, but things don't always work out that way if you've got a multicultural, diverse group of stakeholders.
That's true.
There's different ways to do that. So what tools can we use, Vjollca, to assess risk and uncertainty, and kind of, you know, tools of environmental analysis?
Well, there are a number of tools that can be used, like, for example, SWOT analysis, PESTEL analysis, Porter 5 Forces framework, internal and external factors, matrix. So these are only a few tools that can be used. Otherwise, there are other tools too that are available. And I have seen that a lot of these tools are really used quite frequently by project managers in order to assess the risks and in order to make sure that their projects are being managed and are going towards the successful implementation.
I mean, it's been a long time since we studied these. Let's see if we can remember them for anyone who doesn't. Vjollca might have to help me. SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. PESTEL, ooh, political, economic, social, technological, legal?
And the last one,
environmental. And Porter's 5 Forces, power of supplier, power of buyer. There's the competitions in there. There's 2 other ones. So I think that's food for thought. If you want to go check out Michael Porter, he is a god in the business world. Everyone studies Michael Porter. So
yeah. It has been over a year since I did this, so I have to go back and check what this.
Well, my wife's doing a master's in accounting and business control, and she is also using the same analytical tools. So they're very, very, very good and highly widely used across business. Fantastic tools to use as well. As we talked about before, there are various methodologies as well. You know, from Scrum to Agile, from Lean to Six Sigma 6. There are so many as well. But the NPM takes a big holistic look at all of them. How do you think our masters and our online masters in project management equips our project managers for today's landscape? How has it equipped you? How do you feel about your value and what you can give as a project manager?
It gives a lot of maturity in project management. It gives a lot of knowledge on the business environment. It gives you a knowledge of the techniques that project managers can use in managing projects. It gives you a lot of knowledge about the experience or how the project management is done in the world and what can be taken as the best practice. It gives you a lot of knowledge on assessing the risk, assessing the opportunities, assessing the threats in project management. It gives you a lot of leadership skills. So there are many advantages that you, or a lot of learning experience you get from doing this program. And it gives you the flexibility because the program is online and you don't have to be in the campus. So the advantage, another advantage, and I think this is the key, is that you will be able to practice your knowledge into your work environment on the daily basis. You learn a lot of techniques and you are able to immediately apply these techniques in the workplace, and then you see your results being there, tangible, visible, day by day. And this is what I like the most with the program.
It's a farm to table program. Exactly, you take it straight
Exactly.
from the classroom.
Yes, I think you just found the right words for this.
A farm to table program for a cradle to grave ambition. So what a project. So it's time to take some questions now. So many questions. Let's have a look at some of them now. What was the biggest challenge you faced in your Kosovo project so far, and how have you managed to overcome some of the challenges?
One case that I would like to share is a very tight schedule I had last year in spending funding from a donor organization to the partner municipalities. Because Kosovo is in a transitional period, everything functions quite slow. So does the municipalities. This donor organization with whom I am working has funding allocated to municipalities so that they can do projects with this money. The problem is that municipalities still don't have sufficient level of capacities to absorb this money. So in order for the municipalities not to lose this money, we had given them a deadline to spend this money or prepare projects that would
account for the budget.
Exactly. So we had end of the year as the deadline, and here comes December, early December, and there was no progress at all by municipalities to get this money. So I had to clearly communicate the message to the municipalities, inform them of the risk losing the money, inform them of the jeopardy in the image if they lost the money. So these were all activities that I had to do in a period of 2-3 weeks in order for them to reach the money. So
visualization, yeah.
that's how I worked closely with them, with all the project managers in the respective municipalities on the daily basis in order for them to get the money. In the end, it really paid off because we managed to spend about 1.5 million in 3 weeks' time, and municipalities remained in partnership with the donor organization, which was the main risk they had if they didn't get this money.
Unbelievable.
So this is one of the study cases or the cases I had gone through last year, and the way I had to do work in order for them to get what they want.
Often it's hard enough to find money as a fundraiser, but when you actually have the money, people don't understand that it's not easy to channel funds as well, that there needs to be systems as well, and they need to be pretty secure, and the people working on them have to as well.
But it's understandable. I think a transitional period for a country that has undergone a kind of conflict the same way we did, it's understandable to not have sufficient capacities within the entities to do the work. And there is always a certain level of procedure they have to go through in order to do all these processes. But still, there was a lot of challenge which I had to overcome through assisting in a way that would enable them still to feel the ownership of the process and gain or get the money that they needed to get in order to continue the partnership with this donor organization.
It's unbelievable, the glamorous life of a project manager. So how do you manage internal stakeholders? There's another question, Vjollca. How do you manage internal stakeholders, especially those that behave as if the project is the problem of the project manager? I'm sure a lot of project managers hear about that, especially if they're externally hired to come into a company as a consultant or whatever. Sometimes you get the feeling that they might be out to sabotage your project. Have you ever had that case where you have some people in a project that aren't aligned and don't see any worth in what you're doing or on side with your methodology?
I face that on a daily basis. It's nothing new. I mean, there is always a risk from be it external or internal stakeholders. There is a lot of effort that one project manager needs to do in terms of making all the stakeholders be happy. And I go back to the communication. I think the communication is really the key to solving these issues or overcoming these challenges, because people or the stakeholders need to be to feel comfortable in the work they are doing. They need to feel comfortable in the responsibilities they are given. That's why I think even they need to be aware of the risks and the consequences of the risks. So these are a number of traits that, or a number of elements that a project manager has to go through in order for the internal and external stakeholders to be in peace with what is going on or what the activities are.
That's interesting. It reminds me of this week that the famous economist Richard Thaler has won the the Nobel Prize for his work on mental accounting, and the endowment theory of all economists is that the money in your pocket, once you have it, is worth 4 times as much as what you perceive it before you have it. And the same works in terms of funding. What you think you have is worth a lot more than when someone tells you don't have it. And so it's that kind of empathic visualization or realization where you can then attach meaning to something that's going on in the project, to an aim and objective, or funding or whatever that might be. I have some fantastic. Yes, continue.
Sometimes it also, in my experience, I sometimes need to just threat people. They will be losing money if they don't work efficiently. So that is another way. I think it's just important to find the right approach, because dealing with people is dealing with different natures. So sometimes being good to a person doesn't mean that the same technique works for the other person. So you have just to find your way over the things.
Certainly in the for-profit sector, the loss of money is a massive motivator. Having worked for a large life sciences company delivering chemicals across the world to pharmaceutical companies, if those chemicals were late, then they were losing money, and that was the worst thing that could happen on a production line. So construction works very similarly as well. Time is money. A great question here from one of our audience today: how do you integrate and interface the various different mini projects or packages with different requirements and specification involved in the rebuilding of Kosovo? I'll ask you again: how do you interface the various different mini projects and packages that have different requirements and specifications involved in the rebuilding of Kosovo?
In my experience, I have been working with a lot of what we call small-scale projects.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of procedure, they all require the same procedures, be it small or big. It's the same procedure that one has to go through. So when considering a project, be it for approval or implementation, the set of criteria is the same. So you have to go through a certain set of criteria and certain set of procedures in order to bring these pieces together and implement a project. So this is a procedure or an organizational structure or criteria that you have to apply in order, or respect in order to go further with project implementation.
Exactly. I mean, if it's a left-hand, right-hand thing as well, where in terms of rebuilding, someone has to start something and then someone else continues that work, and it's different projects and heads of those projects, but they all integrate towards main objectives. Then there has to be some kind of system, rigid system as well. I assume you use what kind of technology or tools do you like using Vjollca particularly? Do you guys use kind of CRM softwares and kind of group workspaces and things like that? I mean, how do you guys do that on a day-to-day basis?
Actually, in my organization, we go for the simplest monitoring tool, and that is using Excel spreadsheets a lot.
I love Excel.
So I think all the other tools are really good. However, I think the easiest ones are the most easy to use, and also it's easy for all people to get very familiar with the way it works, and then it's very easy to monitor and control all the activities that are going. But at times I also use Gantt charts. Gantt charts are also very good tool to delegate, to control, to be sure or have a picture of your activities and or all the requirements in a matter of minutes. So there are a lot of techniques, but I go for the simplest ones that really makes my work be easy, and it's important to have control over everything and not miss a detail regarding the implementation, which is the most important thing.
Exactly. I mean, I'm convinced in 30, 40 years' time, I'll still be talking about Excel workbooks and sheets, because at the end of the day, the power of Excel is almost infinitesimal. It's huge. It's infinite.
That's true.
Infinite even. Another good question. How do you use the individual strengths and weaknesses of team members to get results?
It's very important to know their weaknesses and strengths, and I have observed that group work really functions. I usually ask people to complement each other so that all the weaknesses of the others are filled with the strengths of the other staff member. And then at the end, they all come as a team, which is really good. They feel they do a teamwork, and they get pride for that. I have seen that to be very important.
I'd agree. So we have another question. What if the project manager's authority is limited in terms of the project scope? What are some of the solutions or tips for project managers whose authority is being limited?
Authority in decision making?
I think so, yeah.
Because that happens a lot. As a project manager, you always have a superior that you have to report to, and I have seen that going to the superiors with a solution to a problem is really very, very valued. Instead of only putting the problem or difficulty on the plate and asking for a solution is not the best way or not the best approach. But if you have your ideas on how to solve that problem, but you have a limited authority, then going to your superior with a solution or to the problem you're having, then it makes it easier for your supervisor or your superior to select a solution for that project, for that problem, and then the issue is really solved much easier.
Okay, lovely. I've got quite a particular question. May or may not be able to answer it. Let's have a look into it. And in Rebuilding Kosovo, is library development one of the projects? If so, what approach would you use in book ordering and delivery? Because I need help. And if there's any particular software that you might recommend on this development project. So yeah, some guy in the audience here is looking to do library development in his or her country, and so that's interesting as well. Is that something that you've come across in any of your projects, or education, re-establishing educational institutions, etc.?
The projects I have been involved are mainly small-scale infrastructure, meaning building roads, sidewalks, public lighting, stuff like that. But I do have a knowledge about the library, and we do have a lot of libraries. One thing I know is that Kosovo is trying or making the efforts to move towards the electronic way of providing literature for people, because of this high rapid development trends in the information technology. People tend to use electronic books much more than physical books. That's why there is a tendency to bring the libraries into the next level, which would be giving access, pretty much like Roehampton, giving access to people on the electronic libraries. But I think one piece of advice is that a library, I don't know the country where the question is coming. However, I think that the library doesn't have to be big enough so big in this space. It has to be filled in with books. So maybe trying to make an order of sufficient books and maybe get an idea of what is the nature of books there is the demand for, then maybe that would do the trick.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's Nigeria, yeah, that's interesting as well. And what makes me think, from a business perspective, is affiliation. I would be looking for affiliates. I would be looking to try to find local universities with e-libraries, local affiliates and council libraries. I'd be looking to find businesses that want to donate, businesses that have investments in research and development, biomedicinal, technology. These type of businesses often do training and education on site and have training and education departments that are quite robust beyond, normal commercial or retail-based organizations. So maybe it's worth pursuing some expertise from affiliation and commercial affiliation in terms of rebuilding library projects. But wow, that's just an interesting question in itself. Last question I'd like to ask you. Some project managers do come in without their own team. They don't get to pick their own team, or they haven't worked in an organization for years, or they come in and as project manager mercenaries, come in, do a project, and then leave. That's what a lot of people are aspiring to do, quite honestly, because it's more lucrative in many fields to go do that. And we understand that that is an option for those that are willing to take a higher career risk to be airlifted and dropped in, or who might want to go and work for one of the big companies like McKinsey or a big project management factory. Now, a question here that's interesting in that perspective, and also interesting in terms of virtual teams, and how do you manage team members, Vjollca, that you do not have full control over? They're in the project, but they're not reporting to you. They have different functional lines.
This is a very good question. That is something that I think a lot of managers are struggling with, especially if you don't have full control over the staff members with whom you're working. So I don't know, maybe working closely with the superiors to whom they report, or create a kind of chain of command that they would feel at least some level of responsibility towards the activities they have to report to you, or maybe do a performance evaluation once in a while, see how they are doing, what their plans are, what their performance is. I have not come through this situation in my experience, so I would not know exactly what I would do, but these are only some ideas that come to my mind as we speak.
I think in the case of many companies that have mergers and acquisitions, they have, you know, a lot of issues of these kinds in projects that come in. If you're on any MBA course, you'll learn a theory called sense making by Carl Weick, which is a kind of you know, how do we turn sense into meaning? And so what sense making is all about aligning people to look at an issue through the same frame and through the same lens. We might disagree on a solution, but we can see the problem or see the potential solution through the same lens, whether we disagreed before or not. And part of the project manager's or leader's duty is to align people to be looking at the issue through the same frame, to be making sense of something, sense making, the same reaction to cues, the reflecting of stimulus before enacting and actually doing something in the project stage. Before that's done, you need to frame and align, and that's part of the sense making process. So I think that's a nice way to finish as we make sense of all the skills and attributes needed to be a project manager in 2017. Vjollca, thank you very much for your insight. I have one last question for you. What was your favorite element of studying at the University of Roehampton, London online? And what are you hoping to do in the future for this project? 2 questions, really.
My favorite, there are a lot of favorite things, a lot of things that I liked with Roehampton. I liked a lot the fact that I got to be in an international environment in the shared activities, for example. I have known a lot of people, and I still keep contact with these people. I still get insights, and we share experiences with them on the day-to-day basis. I liked a lot the flexibility that university gives, so that you study on your own path. You don't have to be tight on the schedule, or you don't have to be on this certain time in the classroom, so otherwise you would be losing something. I liked a lot the approach that this staff has. Staff has been really so nice and so helpful and so efficient. And if I can say I use this as an example in the University of Kosovo, whenever I go there for a thing or for an issue or for a request, I always use the University of Roehampton as an example for its efficiency and for its kindness and for the way they do things. And I think that this is the first step in my further contribution to my country, but also wider, because I think that there is a lot of experience I can share. There is a lot of contribution I can give. I see myself to be in a project management area or field, not building only Kosovo, not doing projects only for Kosovo, but maybe give a contribution that will serve other people in the world.
Thank you very much. We're very proud of the work you've done. We say that Rome wasn't built in a day, but I tell you what, some of it was. Thank you very much to our audience as we get to our aims and objectives one step at a time through good communication, good planning, and an open involved community. Thank you very much to everyone. This has been a University of Roehampton London online presentation. Thank you very much. Goodbye, Vjollca. Thank you for this evening.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Stephen for producing this webinar and all of the questions. And good evening. Goodbye.